Welcome to the gold standard here from the Full 40 Sports Network and, of course, Lower Broad Hockey. My name is Braden Gall, and you can get to me on twitter.com or in the chat room at Lower Broad Hockey. Those are the two places that you can get to me when we talk about the Preds.
And I'm neither Michael Gallagher nor Emma Lingen. I am Adam Vingan, filling in for Emma and Michael. I hear Michael's not feeling very well. I hope he's feeling better. I don't know where Emma is. That's none of my business.
Everybody, please tweet at MG_Sports_ Michael Gallagher. Say, I hope you're feeling better, and then send him a picture of a chicken wing with a bone in it.
Does he not like chicken wings? I missed this.
If you know, you know. It's part of the chat over at Lower Broad Hockey. We got it. Popeye's called, no free shouts, but Popeye's called me out for my anti-boneless wing take. And Emma and Michael were all over it, and then it turned into a giant discussion in the chat room over at Lower Broad Hockey. So that's why you subscribe. This is what you subscribe.
Quickly, here's my take. A boneless wing is a chicken nugget. It is not a wing.
Yeah.
A wing has to have a bone in it.
As do all parts of the chicken.
Don't be a bone baby.
Oh, chicken finger boy.
I like chicken fingers. I like chicken nuggets. I eat plenty of my son's chicken nuggets and chicken tenders that he doesn't finish. I like them.
Tendies.
But
I love some tendies.
A wing and a tender are two totally different things.
Oh man! So like Josh and there's so many folks that were in the. It turned into a huge discussion in the chat room over there at Lower Broad Hockey. Lower Broad Hockey, of course, over on Substack. Please sign up and subscribe. Pay for good journalism, folks. It is absolutely listener supported. It is by you and for you. And the more you guys support us, the more we will be able to reinvest that money back into you. Adam, of course, filling in for Emma and Mike today, as we do appreciate you hanging out. If you missed our conversation about the UC Saros contract and the debate about whether or not a Stanley Cup champion has to have an elite goaltender, the verdict on all of that, of course, is over on Lower Broad Hockey as well. So, yes, Dark says, was a great debate over in the people were posting like diagrams of the chicken where the bones are with the names of the official titles of all the different bones, and it was fantastic. But this is what I want you guys, the audience, to do, which is to tweet at MG_Sports_ and say, hey, I hope you're feeling better. Here's a picture of a chicken wing with a bone in it. That's what I want. Okay, today on the show, development camp, and of course we've got futures game. A few large, broad takeaways. I don't think we need to get too deep into the weeds. Great article by Michael Gallagher over on Lower Broad Hockey, covering all the things that he took away from those particular games and week of action. So we'll get into that. I've done some work on the Bally Sports future broadcast for the Nashville Predators. It is very difficult to find out exactly what's happening, but we do have some dates and some information for you. We'll have a conversation about that a little bit later on. But I think the vast majority of this is sort of to put a line in the sand, Adam, first, like sort of immediately following the big rush of draft and free agency, to sort of actually, all the Stanley Cup odds are out now. All the Central Division odds are out now. And we can kind of look at this team and this organization and say, okay, after all the action, all the movement, what are a reasonable set of expectations for this franchise, for this team in 2024-25? And what would we define success? How would we define success for this franchise moving forward? So a lot of stuff to get to today on the show. So you want me to start with Vegas odds, Adam, or do you have any more boneless wing takes?
All I'm going to say is that a boneless wing is a chicken nugget. There is no difference between a boneless wing and a chicken nugget. I'm sure there actually is a difference, but as far as I'm concerned, there's no difference.
I again, and in the chat, there's a link to don't ask me how I saw this clip on a show that I refuse to watch, but my wife does. There is a description of what a chicken finger boy is. And I'm not accusing Michael or Emma or you or anyone of being a chicken finger boy, but there's definitely a type of person that is a chicken finger boy. And
what
boneless
show?
I can't. It's one of the ones where people get married without like seeing each other. You know what I mean? One of those stupid shows. But the one woman, and I'm going to butcher the whole story, but this woman who's on that show marries this guy, and there's a clip of them walking through the grocery store, and she's like, "Do you want one of these? Do you want to try this? Do you want to try this? Do you like this? Have you ever had one of these?" And he's like, "No." That's like all normal food. And then she rips on him for being a chicken finger boy. Go watch the clip. It's in the chat room, Lower Broad Hockey. Okay. Vegas odds are out for the Stanley Cup Championship. Nashville 10th at plus 1,800. That puts them, I believe, 6th in the Western Conference. Edmonton is number 1 at plus 850. Dallas is number 3 at plus 1,100. Colorado number 7 at plus 1,300. Vegas plus 1,600 at number 9, and then Nashville at number 10. If you're looking at the Western Conference, Nashville, I believe, 6th in the Western Conference and 3rd in the Central Division. I find the more interesting numbers to be the Central Division, Adam. Dallas at plus 230, Colorado at plus 260. So those two are essentially even according to the betting public and what Vegas wants you to bet on. And then Nashville, kind of a slight step back, but still on that top tier at plus 380. And then you got to drop all the way down to Winnipeg at plus 700. So there's clearly a gap there based on the odds makers. In the top 3 in the division, Nashville clearly included in that. Plus 1,200 for Minnesota, plus 2,000 for St. Louis, plus 2,500 for Utah, and plus 10,000 for your Chicago Blackhawks. So ultimately, look, 117 points is the record for the team. I don't think we're talking about that in this conversation. 53 wins is the record for this team. The only other time they had more than 50 wins was in 2007. That was 51 wins. 7 times have they been over 100 points. They tied their career high or season high as a franchise with 266 goals last year, and they are minus 350 to make the playoffs. So very, very, very high odds for this team to make the playoffs. And of course, not quite as good as Dallas or Colorado, but on that challenging tier. Your first, Adam, your reaction to all of that information, which again is not, it's designed to get bettors to go on both sides, right? It's designed for you to, it's not saying that that's what they think is going to happen. It's designed for it to adjust to the public's perception of what's going to happen. All of that information, how do you respond? How do you react to all of that new information about the team?
So where were the Predators in that list?
Which list? I gave you like 7.
Okay, give me the first one that you look at. When it comes to betting, you're talking to the wrong guy.
They're 3rd in the Central.
Okay.
But closer to Dallas and Colorado than they are to Winnipeg and St. Louis and Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of on their own tier, but up. In the Western Conference, they're 6th, and in the Stanley Cup Championship odds, they're 10th, with heavy odds to make the playoffs. And then I think we can get into more detail about this franchise itself and its own records. And should that be the territory we're talking about this team in? So let's start with the odds first.
3rd in the Central. That seems right. I would like to see them finish in the top 2. But understandably, Dallas and Colorado have had more success in recent years than the Predators. And Dallas was the best team in the Western Conference this past season. Colorado, not far removed from winning the Stanley Cup, so I get that. 6th in the Western Conference. Can you list which teams again were in front of them on that list?
Edmonton is the number 1 favorite to win the whole cup, to win the whole thing.
That makes sense.
Dallas, Colorado, as we mentioned. And then they've got Vegas and Nashville pretty close at like 9 and 10, roughly the same amount of odds.
I think Vegas is going to take a big step back. I think considering the talent that they lost in the offseason, of course, headlined by Jonathan Marchessault, but they lost Chandler Stevenson. They lost Michael Amadio. There are some other players that I'm probably blanking on that they lost.
You can't play this salary cap mumbo jumbo game.
No, it was going to catch up to them eventually. Yeah. The bill eventually comes due in the NHL. It's not like the NFL where you can keep pushing it down the road a year, 2 years, however long. Take it from someone who's a New Orleans Saints fan. They push that cap down the road.
As long as you get the ring, though, and Vegas got their ring, the Saints got their ring. You just got to get the ring. So
and they did. But I just think that team is going to be thin at forward specifically. So I think the Predators are going to be better than the Golden Knights this season.
What about Vancouver? Because I think they gained a lot of really important experience last year.
They did, but they were.
That seems awfully low by them by the odds.
They were a team that was on this is an old school fancy stat called PDO, which is a combination of a team's shooting percentage and save percentage. And 100 is supposed to, like, the combined save percentage and shooting percentage, it's supposed to even out at around 100. So if you're significantly above 100, you're pretty lucky. If you're
Yeah.
lower than 100, you're a bit unlucky. They were on a significant PDO run, especially at the beginning of the season. That's why they got off to such a great start. And then in the second half of the season, when they came back down to earth a little bit,
Yeah.
it was regression to the mean, I guess you could say. So yes, they did get that experience. Um, but they lost Elias Lindholm, they lost Nikita Zadorov. They did get Jake DeBrusk, which could be a good move. You're hoping that Elias Pettersson has a bounce back year. Will JT Miller be a 100-point player again? I'm confident that Quinn Hughes will continue to be good. Will Thatcher Demko bounce back from his injury? I feel like they are a good team,
Yeah.
but I'm expecting them in terms of standings points to take a bit of a tumble. I'm not expecting them to fall out of the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be anywhere near as good standings wise as they were this past season.
Okay. I mean, I just thought that was interesting for them to win a division, be a 1 seed, and then come back as a seventh ranked team in the Western Conference
Well, I think
behind the
they
Predators.
probably. I think I think the bettors probably see what I see.
Yeah.
I want to see what they were at the All-Star break, because I feel like that was the line of
Well,
demarcation for them.
and the bettors are the hard bettors that are the ones that are placing NHL futures bets in July. Those those bettors are the ones that know the numbers that you're talking about, right? Some regression to the mean. Plus, we saw them regress to the mean in the second half, as you pointed out. But honestly, I thought they played really well in the postseason for a team that had never been there before. Maybe not as well as a 1 seed should, but I just thought that was interesting. A couple of comments here. First of all, Josiah says, "Love having you back, Adam." So there's a
Josiah.
There's a little boost for the ego. Drew says, "Never afraid." Adam, I'm never afraid to tell you how it is. Josh says, 99 points with last year's roster. The additions only need to be worth a few wins or even OT points to reach top 2 or 3 in the division. But here's the point that I think Josh makes. But it still feels like the Preds are a step behind the top tier. I agree with that part of this. Now, we can get into why, but that's where I would go. Some of that might just be historical PTSD as being around the Preds for 25 years. Here's the other side of the equation from more to explore. I think the Oilers are the only team that are clearly better than the Predators next year in the West. Other than that, I'm not sure you can say definitively anyone is better than them. That is where I think this team lives, and that's where I think expectations should sit. I don't think that they are as good as the top tier teams. And if you want to go Colorado, Dallas, and Edmonton on that top tier, I'm fine. If you want to call it just Edmonton, I'm fine with that too. I do not think they are on the top tier. But I don't think, and I agree with more to explore, that I don't think you can say anything definitively about where this team should be located, basically from 2 to 6, 2 to 5 in the Western Conference. But I would not put them on the top tier.
So just because I was looking it up and I want to get it out there, I looked at the Vancouver Canucks PDO pre-All-Star break and post-All-Star break. So remember, 100 is the baseline.
Is this PDO, public display of offense? Is that what this is?
I don't know. I think it's I think it's called is it an orphan acronym, where it's like it's an acronym, but that actually doesn't stand for anything. I don't know.
You're the writer. You tell me.
Either way, the Canucks PDO in the first half of the season was 104.5.
Yeah.
Their PDO in the second half of the season after the All-Star break was 100.2. So basically, they were playing as they should have been playing in the second half of the season, and they were overachieving in the first half of the season. So I feel like you can find a happy medium there, which is why I think the Canucks will take a little bit of a tumble down the standings. I bet my guess is they probably still finish second in the Pacific Division. I assume Edmonton will win the Pacific Division because they won't get off to such a terrible start.
I think it is. There's the top. Okay, how about this? Let's try it.
Okay, let's break it down. Let's break down the upper crust of the Western Conference.
Let's try it this way, and I think it's fairly simple. If you told me it was Edmonton, Colorado, and Dallas on the top tier, I would say fine.
Yes.
If you then say it is Vegas, Nashville, Vancouver, and then maybe the Kings, maybe those is the second tier. And if you told me you think Nashville is the top of that tier, I would have any problem with that. I think that's fair.
I think that sounds right. And On The Athletic today, Dom Lucian, which I worked with the guy, I should know how to pronounce his last name, but it is very hard. He had a story about which teams improved the most during the offseason using his analytic formula. And he had the Predators at number 6 in terms of the 6th most improved team in the league based off what they did in the offseason, according to his formula. The teams ahead of them, number 1, Chicago, which I think was, it's probably skewed, right? Because they were so bad last year and they added actual NHL players like Tyler Bertuzzi and Teuvo Teravainen. New Jersey at number 2. Washington at number 3.
New Jersey's odds are off the charts. I think people are over their ski. I think the market's going to correct for New Jersey.
Because one, they have a goaltender now. They traded for Jacob Markstrom, who's an actual legitimate NHL starting goaltender. And I'm sure most people are assuming that based on what they did 2 seasons ago when they were a 100-point team and won a playoff round, that you're going to get bounce back seasons from Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier and the like. So, yeah, I do think New Jersey – I feel like New Jersey is that team that a lot of people are going to call a quote-unquote dark horse this season because of just how much of a step back they took. But so the Predators are 6th on that list.
But New Jersey is 6th in Stanley Cup odds. So I don't think –
that seems high. That seems really high for a team that, even though they were a 100-plus point team 2 seasons ago, they only won 1 round in the playoffs. They beat the Rangers, and that was it. Right. So that seems high. But you look at these other teams ahead of the Predators on this list by Dom, and they're mostly bad teams that added really good players, like Utah. I mean, they got Mikhail Sergachev, they got John Marino. The Predators are, of those teams, the team that most people expect to compete. So maybe you could say among teams that people expect to actually be playoff contenders, I guess New Jersey and then Nashville.
Yeah, they were the 2 best teams last year of the top teams that improved in the offseason, is what you're saying, right?
Yes. So when I look at this Predators roster, obviously they added a ton of scoring talent. You add a 40-goal scorer in Steven Stamkos. You add another 40-goal scorer in Jonathan Marchessault. And that should theoretically help this team score more goals. This team scored a lot of goals last season.
Most in franchise history.
So you add 2 more players who are proven scorers, and you think that the offense should get better. Now you have to also allow for the fact that there is going to be some regression. For example, I do not expect Gus Nyquist to have another career season in his mid-30s. I expect Ryan O'Reilly to take a step back offensively. And you have to factor in maybe a little bit of growing pains in terms of Stamkos and Marchessault adjusting to a new team. Now, I don't think it's going to be that much of an adjustment, just because most of the team is back and it's the 2nd season under Brunette. So I don't think you're going to see a start to the season that you saw this past season where it was bad while they were trying to figure out what to do. And Marchessault and Stamkos and Brady Shea, they're all professionals. They've been around. I don't think it's going to be that much of an adjustment. You also have to factor in, I think one thing we do forget a lot is Shea is one of the better goal scorers from the back end in the NHL. So we do talk a lot about Marchessault and Stamkos and their ability to score goals, and understandably so. But Shea is one of the best goal scoring defensemen in the league. I've mentioned this before on the show. Over the past 2 seasons, the only 2 defensemen in the league who have scored more even strength goals than Brady Shea are Erik Karlsson and Cale Makar. That's the list. And he's tied with Roman Josi in even strength goals. So
sounds fun to me.
There's going to be more goal scoring from the back end too.
All right. So ultimately, and I'm not yet to the defining success yet, but I think expectations should be no lower than 3rd place in the division. And I personally
think expectations should be no lower than 2nd in the division.
Okay, that's fair. What I think is interesting about Dallas and Colorado is I think you could argue that the reason they would be ahead, not just pure, whatever, experience, talent, etc., whatever, is the defense. Colorado and Dallas might be 2 of the best 3 or 4 teams in the entire league in terms of defense. And I think that's what's interesting.
Talking team defense or actual defensemen?
Just the defensemen, I guess I should say. The defense core, I should say.
Well, Dallas, I think, took a step back in that department. They lost Chris Tanev, who was just a trade deadline acquisition, but was very good, especially in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. They lost Yanni Hakanpää. Your mileage may vary on Hakanpää as a defenseman. I'm not sure who, and they bought out Ryan Suter, which is, I think, addition by subtraction. But they have Heiskanen, they have Thomas Harley, they have some good young defensemen. I don't know what their full defense core looks like, but they lost defensemen that were impactful defensemen. In Colorado, they lost Sean Walker, who was a trade deadline acquisition, but they still have Cale Makar and Devin Taves. So, that probably adds to it. But in terms of depth, I need to go look at those teams' depth charts defensively. But off the top of my head, I would put Nashville's defense core up against Dallas and Colorado.
Well, here's what I would do about Nashville. If it is Shea Yossi on the top line, which seems logical and probable, then I think their top pairing is as good as anybody in the NHL, if not one of the best. I think that's fair. I think if Lauzon Carrier is your second pairing, I like both of those players, I think that is a minus pairing. I don't think that is among the better or even average. I think that's a minus group. And then if you're telling me Fabro and Schenn are involved, from a price standpoint, you're not getting value for those 2 guys at all relative to what it should cost for you to have 3 sets of defensemen. I don't know what they're going to do, though. Like if Lauzon Carrier is your second pairing, what you want to do is probably break up Shea and Yossi on the power play for sure, which then gives you 2 good power play lines, which if you're talking about expectations, we get into defining success. We can say they need to be better than 21.5% and 16th in the NHL in power play. They have to be better than that. And if you add Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea to a roster that already was the highest scoring in the history of the franchise, you need to set the record for goals scored this year. And that doesn't mean that that's the goal or what should make you successful or give you wins. But if you're going to invest this kind of money with the team that already was the highest scoring, it needs to be statistically, it needs to be the best offense we've ever seen. So no pressure.
I'm looking at Dallas's defense. They added Matt Dumba in free agency. They have Thomas Harley. They have Heiskanen. They have Esa Lindell, who I think is underrated. They added Ilya Lyubushkin. So it's not bad. And now I'm looking at Colorado. Obviously Makar and Taves up top, which, I think is probably the best pairing in the league. They added Calvin DeHaan. They still have Sam Girard.
I would have Colorado. I would have Colorado ahead of Nashville in defense.
I would have Colorado. I would have Colorado. If I were to do that, it'd be just solely on the power of their top pair. Like,
isn't that what Nashville is, though?
I think Carrier is
okay.
I think Carrier is a really good defenseman. Like, I think he doesn't get the due he deserves for what he's been able to do over the past few years. I think it's an interesting conversation. Then the question is, when you look at the forward groups for those 3 teams specifically, of course, in Colorado, you still have McKinnon, you still have Rantanen. So that tips the scales. Their depth might not be as good, but they have, some of the best forwards in the league up top. Dallas, as we know, is probably the deepest team in the league in terms. I think they had 8 20 goal scorers last season, but you've got Robertson and Hintz, and now they're going to have to find a new line mate because Joe Pavelski is not officially. I don't think he's officially retired, but he's not expecting to play. The Marchment, Duchesne, Sagan line was really good last year. You've got Wyatt Johnston. You have Logan Stankoven. There are probably others I'm forgetting. Really good depth there. So with the Predators, I think now you have 2 good lines. And it'll be interesting to see what the Predators choose to do with their second line. I think it makes sense to go into the season with that top line intact because you know what you're getting. And then I think a lot of people assume it might be Stamkos on the left, Novak in the middle, Marchessault on the right. That would be interesting. The center depth.
Last week I said the thing that's tantalizing to me is the idea of Evangelista with Stamkos and Marchessault, but I don't know how you put that group together.
The only way that you could put it
plays
together is putting Stamkos at center, which he can do, but I don't think it's the right thing to do long term.
Yeah. I agree. I think Evangelista's ability to sort of see the ice and make plays and put people in positions to succeed is nice to have a couple of 40-goal scorers around you if you're going to do that.
Yeah, it's really, if it's Novak ultimately, It's definitely sink or swim time for Tommy Novak. I think that his playoff performance soured him among some Predators fans because he was a non-factor in the postseason. And if you can't score or if you can't put up points next to a first ballot Hall of Famer on your left and a recent Conn Smythe Trophy winner on your right, what are
Right.
you doing?
Yeah.
So that's a big story heading into training camp is what they decide to do
Well,
at second line
and
center.
here's ultimately the thing. We don't have to go too deep into the weeds on like second pairing versus second pairing and second line and where does Marchessault play. We've got all summer to do that. At the end of the day, if you package together the blue line pairings of Dallas with a goaltender and the blue lines pairings of Colorado and a goaltender, I think they're all pretty close. But I would give the edge to Colorado and Dallas on offense and defense as a holistic roster. Now, to your point about expectations, is it okay for Predators fans to say Nashville should finish as the like 2 seed is the goal? I don't
think
know.
that should be like 2 seed in the Central or 2 seed overall in the
No,
West.
two seed in the Central. I don't know. I think being better than one of them is an okay expectation.
I would agree with that.
I don't think being the division champion is a proper expectation, and I don't know which one I actually personally like yet enough to say I think Colorado is better or Dallas is better. I think I would lean Dallas, but I could also be talked into Colorado. I think the goal should be to be better than one of them, and then of course you end up, as I said last week on the show, you spend all this money, you work hard, you develop in year 2, and your goal and your gift is that you get to play either Colorado or Dallas in the first round of the playoffs.
And that's just the way it is. No, I think that finishing second at least in the Central Division is a reasonable expectation for Predators fans to have. When you spend as much money as the Predators did in free agency, and you bring in the players that they brought in free agency, this is not a team that's going to be this like being a wild card team with this roster. To me, would be unacceptable. Like I think that it needs to. I mean,
I agree with that.
The lowest that it should finish. I mean, like I said, I think it needs to be top 2. I would accept 3. If they finish third, I think that would be acceptable. But I think preferably it needs to be top 2.
Drew says, I think this is like Drew's speaking for the entire fan base. I'm so stoked, but I need to see the new signings play out well for us. Braden, your PTSD is justified. No one is running out to buy a Stamkos Preds jersey just yet.
I mean, they're on sale. Number 91.
The fact
I did think it was funny that, I mean, Brady Shea is, I think, always worn 76. Like, people who have PK Subban jerseys, you can now repurpose them.
Change the nameplate.
As Brady Shea jerseys. Yeah.
Well, Well, so, I mean, I think it is unreasonable to like Colorado and Dallas have both talent and experience edges here that I think are maybe the gap has closed significantly, but they still have those 2 edges. So I think so. Here's where we get to more into like defining success. If they are the 3 seed, I think to your point, I agree that is the lowest I would set expectations. Anything below that, I would call underachieving. Now, barring some crazy injuries, UC Saros misses 100 games or something. You know what I mean? Like, but if you put, which would be a record in a season, if they're finished as a 3 seed and they win a series, I think we can begin to start talking about success, because I think I do start the conversation with success, defining success. I think there's some statistical metrics we can get to with this team, but ultimately it is about advancing in the playoffs. They've been there. This is the John Hines story. This is the UC Saros story. This is the thing that will hang around them until they actually do it. You've got to win a playoff series. I will not call you finish as a 2 seed and you lose in the first round. It's a good year. It's a fun year. It's a competitive year. Maybe some young players develop, but you didn't go sign a bunch of 34-year-olds and 30-year-olds to lose in the first round of the playoffs again. So I think it is okay to set the standard as a playoff win. 2 seed, playoff win. 3 seed, doesn't matter. You need to win the first series. And I think that is ultimately how I would start to define success. We can talk about other stuff, but that's where I would start.
Yeah. I mean, winning a home playoff game would be a good start, considering they haven't done that in 3 years. And by the time we get to the playoffs, it will have been 4 years. 2021 was the last time the Predators won a playoff home game. 6 in a row. 6 losses in a row.
Trust me, my 7-year-old knows all about it. She was.
Yeah. Your 7-year-old has never seen a Predators playoff win. No, I'm kidding. Home win playoff win. I'm joking.
She's only been to one, and yes, it was that one.
I mean, and people who are listening and chatting I would love to know if you think I'm nuts for saying this. I think that Josiah says I expect second seed and competing for first seed in a second round series is the expectation. I
I
think
agree.
that's reasonable.
I agree. I agree.
I mean, tell me if I'm nuts here, which you've never been shy about doing. I think they need to make it to the conference final. I think that this team has a limited window. Oh, someone said a Western Conference final with Stamkos.
Josiah came back and he said a Western Conference final with
Now, I
Stamkos on
want
the
to know
team
from
is a
Josiah, is he
must.
talking about during Stamkos' contract or
I-
next season?
That's how I take it too, is that I think, and honestly, this is how I would, I don't mean to like jump into your way here, but I think this is where you were going. I think this year I'm okay with a 2 or a 3 seed in a playoff series win. But I think in the 3-year window of the NHL, as Dallas is going to age, for sure Dallas is going to age. We don't know who's going to jump up in the division and all of a sudden be great and new players and young guys. But I think in the next 3 years, they have to get to a Western Conference final. I think that's like you've invested in this 3-year window. I don't like windows. I think windows can open and close very fast, but like there is clearly a bunch of guys at Yossi and Forsberg and Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea. These are the guys in their 30s, and they have and Saros is getting there too. They have a 3-year window of time where a Western Conference final is almost mandatory in my opinion.
So this is why I think a Western Conference. I mean, I would agree over that stretch of time that it's mandatory, but I'm setting the bar that high next season. And my reason for that is there are many reasons. One, as we've talked about and as I've mentioned, this is an old team. It's one of the oldest teams in the league, and that's by design, and that's okay. But because they're an old team, you have to take advantage of the fact that you have to take advantage of these players while they're still effective players in their early to mid 30s. So when it comes to Steven Stamkos, let's talk about Stamkos specifically, for example. Still, he scored 40 goals last year. I'm confident that Steven Stamkos is still a 30 to 40 goal scorer next season. But as he continues to get older, it's going to be harder for him to score that many goals. The example I use is look what happened with Alex Ovechkin this past season. Now, Ovechkin is 30. This was his age 38 season. But he had 8 goals in his first 43 games of the season. He turned it on near the end and ended up with, I think, 31. So he got there.
Which is still insane, by the way.
Right. But 8 goals in 43 games from Alex Ovechkin. Yeah. Like, the fear is, if you're a Predators fan, is that you miss out on winning a championship in these first 2 years. And by year 3 of Stamkos' contract, he's scoring 8 goals in his first 43 games. Like, that's I think something that you do have to keep in mind. So while you still have, you have Stamkos as a 40 goal scorer coming off of a 40 goal season. You have Marchessault coming off of a 40 goal season, for the first time in his early 30s.
I think he's more of a 33 to 36 guy.
I set the baseline for combined goals for Stamkos and Marchessault at 60. Like whether they both get,
I would go higher, but I agree.
You would go higher. I think if they can combined get to at least 60, I think that is as low as it should go, assuming they stay healthy.
Okay.
But you have Stamkos coming off a 40 goal season. You have Marchessault coming off a 40 goal season. You have Roman Josi coming off a Norris Trophy runner-up season. You have Philip Forsberg coming off of a second-team All-NHL left wing season. You're hoping for a bounce-back season from UC Saros. Like you have these players who are your core players who are older,
when you put
coming
it that
off
way,
of really great seasons, and the likelihood of them continuing to do that as they age is low. So I'm just saying you have to strike while the iron is hot. I'm not saying they have to win the Stanley Cup this season. And I know it's a big jump to say, well, this team hasn't won a playoff round in 6 years, and you're expecting them to win 2 rounds this season. Yes, I think that is what I think Predators fans should have high expectations. Yeah. Because if you don't take care of business in the early portions of these contracts that you gave out in free agency, it could get really ugly.
Yeah,
so
look,
you have to be quick.
Not to like pour salt in the wound here, but they were almost. You could make this case. It's a little dramatic and hyperbolic, but they were 6 seconds away maybe from winning a playoff series. So I just like they were very close. They played very well in that series. and they made some mistakes, and hopefully the idea is they learn from all of those mistakes and fix some of those problems. Let's go through some of these comments here. Nate says, good to see you, Nate. He says, Adam is so right. Western Conference final or bust. If the Preds don't win a cup in the next 2 or 3 years, there was another one in here, and I think it was Nate that said, if they don't win a cup, it's a complete failure. I don't think complete failure is the right phrase for a franchise if you don't win a championship. I think if a complete failure would be no playoff series wins, maybe no Western Conference finals, a power play that doesn't improve, an offense that's not the most talented and best that we've ever seen in franchise history. Saros continues to struggle. Like, there's complete failure, and then there's not achieving your ultimate goal. And I think those are two different things. Joel says if you're a cap max team with an aging roster, you are all in for a Western Conference final and cup final. Yes, I think we all agree with that. Austin says next season expectations, second or third seed with a series win to overachieve expectations, final appearance. So, and I would say one playoff series win this year, Western Conference final in the next 3 years, and I would call the strategy of Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette a success. They would have rebuilt the franchise to a competitive place where they were competing amongst the best teams in the Western Conference. I think it is unreasonable to say cup or bust, and that is how we define success. And I know that's what fans want, is a championship. But I think building a competitive team that could get to a place where they're competing for a championship, I think, is the goal. Pucks bounce crazy ways sometimes. Guys get hot. Backup goaltenders for other teams do stupid shit. Like, it's just like, I don't know. Maybe am I being too Pollyannish on this, Adam?
No, I mean, there is definitely some of that you have to account for. Now, when I've said Western Conference final or bust, one of the counters to that is, well, who are they playing? Well, I don't know. I mean, if we assume they're playing Dallas or Colorado. Josh Wright says the '90s Bills were not a failure, despite the fact they lost 4 consecutive Super Bowls.
So this is a great point. If the Predators go to let's go crazy here. If the Predators go to 3 consecutive Western Conference finals, 3 consecutive Western Conference finals, and they lose all 3, we are going to have all kinds of hand-wringing about Andrew Burnett's inability to win the big series, UC Saros' inability to win the big series, Roman Yossi's inability to win the big series. And in the moment, people are going to be devastated and call for scalps. And that is what's going to happen. And then as time will go on, we will look back and we will say, what an extraordinary run of quality hockey. And I think that's a hard thing to talk about in the moment. But I think Josh nailed it. The 90s Bills, as a kid watching them, felt like a total failure as a football fan watching them play. Like, oh, it's a punchline. They're a joke. And now as I've gotten older, I've looked back on that and I said, what an extraordinary accomplishment to go to 4 consecutive Super Bowls. Unbelievable. No one's ever done it. So I think we can be like, the goal is obviously to win a championship. But if they are competing every year for the next 2 to 4 years with the best teams in the NHL and doing it in the postseason, not in the first round, then I think this strategy will have been, I will call it successful. It's not the ultimate championship and the ultimate goal, but I would call it success. If they are in the playoffs in the second round 3 straight years, I think they need a Western Conference final. They need to give the Preds fans a chance to taste the cup final again. That's what I think.
And considering they've been to 1 Western Conference final ever,
right.
If they get to 3 in a row, that would definitely be successful. But I agree that if they don't get over the hump, there will be, to use your term, a lot of hand-wringing. But I just see a team now that was already an older team that made itself even older by signing a 34-year-old, a 33-year-old, and a 30-year-old. And I just think that you have to be careful when you're a team like that, because it is such a limited window to maximize the effectiveness of those older players. So I think that's why I would like to see a significant jump this season.
Oh, yeah.
And to show that the plan that Barry Trotz has enacted is the right plan. They don't have to win the Stanley Cup this season, but I feel like they need to be considered, one of the top 5 to 10 best teams in the league.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you add the caliber, like this time last season when we were talking about O'Reilly, Nyquist, and Shen. most people thought the Predators were going to take a step back. They decided not to do that. And O'Reilly and Schenn and Nyquist are good players, but your mileage may vary on Luke Schenn. I think he's but
I think it's a bad contract.
it is an objectively bad contract. As they said this time last year, it's an objectively bad contract.
I'm sure he's a wonderful guy.
I hear great things about Luke Schenn.
Right.
I hear he's a stand-up guy.
It's not
bad
personal.
Contract.
It's not personal.
Not personal. But like those guys, they're good players, but they weren't needle movers. Like they weren't huge needle movers. Like when you sign them, you're like, oh, Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist are going to be 2/3 of one of the best top lines in the NHL. Like you didn't have that expectation. with Stamkos and Marchessault specifically, you have that expectation. I mean,
especially if Andrew Burnett can do what he did with those guys. Like that's ultimately the point.
Right.
Is Andrew Burnett, if the system is for real and what happened last year is for real, NHL gets tape on you and they evolve just like every other sport. The idea is that he should maximize those guys too.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that's also, it's anecdotal, it's intangible. In Stamkos and Marchessault, you have two players who are going to be really pissed off. Like they felt like their teams abandoned them and did not do what they felt like they should have done to keep them. We know what Steven Stamkos has meant to the Tampa Bay Lightning. But I think it might get lost just how important Jonathan Marchessault was to the Vegas Golden Knights, considering they're a new franchise.
And they lowballed him.
The guy holds every franchise record of significance for the Vegas Golden Knights. One of the original members of the team, helped build hockey in Las Vegas, won the Conn Smythe Trophy. I just think that because of, can you believe that Steven Stamkos didn't go back to the Lightning is such a huge story. I think can you believe the Vegas Golden Knights didn't bring back Jonathan Marchessault is an equally big. I mean, maybe not equally, but it's a big story too.
But Steven, to your point about every record, Steven Stamkos literally holds every single record in Tampa Bay Lightning history as well, and also has the ring and the cups and the same kind of stuff. So like these guys are both very, very similar, and I agree with you. They should be very motivated. I still think they are mid top line forwards. I don't think they're lower tier top line forwards, minus top line forwards. I wrote a whole story about this, about how contracts are valued. You can check it out. Lower Broad Hockey, of course. I think they should still be valued as they're not elite top line forwards, but they're an average top line forward. And to have four of those guys potentially now on the team is unlike anything they've ever done. So let's go.
Marchessault, by the way, franchise leader in games played, goals, assists, and points. Like I'm sure there are other ones as well, but four big ones right there. Like, it's a big deal that he's not on that team anymore. So,
and Austin says is if they're going to compete for multiple years in a row, like we're talking about, some of the younger players and prospects like Tomasino, Parson, and Kemmel, etc., need to take a step in the next 1 to 2 years. We're going to get to that because I think there actually is that you can actually see that there's a very good overlap in strategy here for these older contracts and then the younger players. They can be patient with a lot of the younger players. Let's do some quick specifics here on this. Personally, I think 50 wins and 100 points with the highest scoring offense and a power play in the top half. Those four things. You finish in the top three, you win a playoff series, that's fine. But specifically, you need to be probably the highest scoring team in team history. You need to get to 100 points, which they had 99 last year. No reason why that shouldn't be done. And again, their franchise record is 53 wins the year they won the President's Trophy, and then, of course, 51 wins in 07. This should be the third team in franchise history to get to 50 wins. I'm not saying that's the mandatory thing, but I think those are reasonable expectations to say upper half power play, 50 wins, 100 points, highest scoring team, top 3 seed. Like I would try to be specific about it if I had to.
Let me ask you one question before we move on, specifically about the power play, because this power play with the talent it could have, we can all assume that Forsberg, Yossi, Stamkos are not on that top unit. Probably Ryan O'Reilly and Marchessault. So let's say that's the 5 in some form or fashion. I personally believe
I might spread one of those guys out, but go for it. Sorry.
That's my counter. I don't. If that's the 5, I think the Predators should have one of those power play units that never leaves the ice. Like I think I look at Edmonton. Their top. Do you know who's on Edmonton's second power play unit? No, because they don't have one. Like it's McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, and Bouchard.
I was
Like,
going to say, is it Ekholm?
No, it's not Ekholm. Well, Ekholm, that means
I think he is.
the second, in the New York Rangers, it's Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider,
Yeah.
Trocheck. Like, those guys don't leave the ice. Like, if you have those 5 guys, they should be on the ice for 2 minutes or 1 minute and 45 seconds, and the puck gets cleared, and the second unit comes on to bring the puck up the ice or something like that. Like, I would love to see the Predators employ one of those types of power play units where it's just like, like the Capitals, like Alex Ovechkin's on the ice for all 2 minutes.
Right,
Like,
load it all up. I
load
hear
it
you.
all up
So
and
the other
leave it
one,
out there.
the problem is then Brady Shea is like left, who's a very nice power play asset. He's left with
But
what?
he's
Like,
used to, but you know what? He is used to not getting a lot of power play time because in Carolina, Brett Burns
Sure.
ran point on the power play. So Shea can get power play time. And if there is a second unit, he will definitely play the Roman Yossi role on the second
Right.
unit.
And so then it's what?
Shea is used to
Evangelista,
playing behind a guy who hogs the power play.
Evangelista, Nyquist, Novak, probably, and then maybe somebody else. I don't know if it's
Off the top of my
Carrier.
head, if you're loading up that top unit, I'm going to say Shea,
Definitely Evangelista.
Shea, Evangelista, Novak, Shea, Evangelista, Novak, Nyquist,
yeah,
and probably Sissons at like the net front or something.
that's the fifth guy's the one I was having trouble with.
Yes.
So, okay, all right. Quickly here, talking about the prospects. Austin just mentioned the prospects. The futures camp and development. Michael Gallagher, excellent piece on Lower Broad Hockey to talk about this stuff. There are some like AHL considerations with Tanner Molendyk and Andrew Gibson. But from what we know, they wanted to draft Andrew Gibson last year. They tried to trade up and get him. They obviously got him in this year's draft, for lack of a better term. And I don't want to say Shea Weber and Ryan Suter, but there are shades of those types, and I think they're going to have these two play together as much as possible. Whether that's in the NHL, I don't know how long they can stay in camp. I think there's some rules about they can't go to the AHL right away. But Molendyk might be, there's a 1%, 5% chance that maybe he's competing in the NHL for a spot. So there's some structural rules there with those two guys, but I think fans should be very, very excited about Gibson and Molendyk. I think Molendyk, the man crush I've had on Tanner Molendyk since he was drafted has been, and got a chance to talk to him that first night, is very evident. It's on the show. Wood and Surin and Stiga played together on the top line. Very productive, those three. Matthew Wood, great piece by Michael Gallagher on his future and his development and his change in college and the new coaching staff and the new team and what he's doing. Again, go check that out. Not going to give that all away. But Igor Surin looks like I put down some comps for these guys, but like as like best case scenario comps. I think best case scenario, you're not going to get Shea Weber and Ryan Suter out of Gibson and Molendyk, but could you get a top line pairing out of the two of them? I think it's possible. They could be that good. That's their best case scenario. I have Matthew Wood as sort of a James Neal type best case scenario. I think he's a winger. I don't think he can play center. I am a little concerned that the skating was such a glaring issue, and it was Barry Trotz's first draft pick, I think, and Poyle might have been involved in that. But to have Andrew Burnett's system ready to go and to draft a player where skating is the question, I do find that to be a little interesting. It doesn't mean he's not going to be a good player. But I would put James Neal there. I think Teddy Stiga reminds me a little bit of Luke Evangelista stylistically, and Surin just skates with raw power, and that's a Forsberg type of thing. So these are all best case scenarios. I don't think any of these guys are going to end up that good, but like that's the goal, I think, of a lot of these players. So I don't know if you had any takeaways from development camp.
I have zero takeaways from development camp because I did not attend development camp. I did not watch the Future Stars game.
It was physical. It was physical.
I would suggest everybody read Michael Gallagher's recaps of development camp and such, because he is much more tuned into that than I am. I always found that development camp was great because it was hockey in the summer, and it was like, yeah, I have something to do.
Right.
But like I've with hockey prospects, and this is how I've always felt about the NHL draft specifically. I don't know who any of these guys are. Like,
no, I agree.
I don't watch junior hockey. I'm not watching, tier B Swedish league hockey. Kudos to the guys that put in the work to do that. And those who do it do a really good job. call me when these guys get to at least the American League.
Sure,
That's
but
usually how I feel about it.
there's two things. You can, in the futures game, for example, or in development game, you can compare them to each other. And you can compare them year over year. Tanner Molendijk had 3 or 4 big hits in the first half of that game, and that is a part of his game that you want to see developed, and that is a part of his game he has developed. He's a bigger, more physical player. Matthew Wood is a bigger, more physical player. Like, you can see some of that stuff. Surin is a powerful skater who is going to be ahead of the puck, ahead of the play when he is going into the zone on offense. He wins a faceoff, he dives at the net, he scores a goal on a rebound. Like, that's what you drafted him for, was to do those things. And he is clearly a more powerful skater and more confident skater than like half the development roster prospects, which is, again, why he's a first-round pick. So I think you saw the things you wanted to see. I don't think you know anything definitively, to your point. I don't think you can tell anything definitively. I think the goals are for Wood, Stiga, and Surin to be top 6 forwards. I think Surin can play center. I think the other 2 are wingers. And I think you want Gibson and Molendijk, that right hand, left hand, that big tall guy, and the smooth skater. Like, you want them to emulate Suter and Weber as they came up through the system. That is sort of what the goal is, in my opinion, after having watched them in the futures game. That's all I would say about that. Otherwise, go read Michael Gallagher stuff and subscribe. Pay for good journalism, lower broad hockey. All right, so Bally Sports stuff. Let's get to this. You guys have been asking about this. And we're going to have an interview with Alex Silverman of Sports Business Journal coming up. I should be able to get you guys that on Lamestream Sports coming up on Friday. I'll see if I can pull some cuts and clips that are maybe specific to the Preds, but that whole conversation should be about hockey. So make sure you tune in on Friday for that. But here's the deal. Bally Sports is down to 9 teams. They just lost. The Florida Panthers just opted out. The Dallas Stars just opted out. Utah and Vegas have also opted out.
I don't think Vegas was on Bally. I think they were on AT.
Maybe they were. So maybe that's why they're down to 9. So they're down to
Vegas
9.
was not on Bally.
Nashville's down to 9. Vegas is. So what's happening is Scripps, which is a over-the-air broadcast network that's sort of in local markets, has come in and purchased the rights for some of these teams. They're going to distribute the Florida Panthers into Fort Myers, into Fort Lauderdale. Coming off a cup, of course, that should be a very valuable asset, and it's why they moved off of Bally's. There's a July 29th hearing coming up in which the Bally Sports, Diamond Sports Group, DSG, has to prove that they are a viable financial entity moving forward, because they do have the rights. And there's a bunch of other teams, like the Rangers own, like 10% of the Bally's Rangers rights or whatever, something like that.
So off the top of my head, these are the teams that I believe are still with Bally: Anaheim, Detroit, Los Angeles, Minnesota, Nashville, St. Louis, and Tampa.
It sounds right. I can't confirm that or deny that, but that sounds
I don't.
Right.
So because Dallas is gone, Florida is gone, Arizona is gone. I think those might be. Yeah. I think those might be the only teams left. Is maybe Columbus?
So there's
Columbus might be on.
Well, you're just rambling with yourself. Let me get some other.
Carolina is also on Bally, by the way.
July 29th, there's a hearing for Bally DSG to prove that they are a viable business entity. The NHL and also Major League Baseball and the NBA, from what I understand, none of them believe that they will be able to do that. So the question is on this July 29th hearing, and these leagues learn that there is no quality business model here moving forward. And I got 0 from anybody at any position of power this week. Everyone is like, folks that normally are tweeting aren't tweeting. Folks that are normally high up that have comments don't have any comments. It is talk to PR, talk to PR, talk to PR. And that's okay. That's why, they've got this huge hearing coming up legally. They're also in a bitter carriage dispute with 2 major entities. Comcast, of course, is the one that affects this market. I don't think you can get Optimum TV here, which is a cable carrier around the country. So they have also been pulled off, Bally's specifically, because they're negotiating for a price point with distributors as well. And they're saying no. So Xfinity Comcast doesn't have Bally Sports, and neither does this other one. So I think that leaves, in this market, I believe AT&T and DirecTV is the only 2 places that are still currently carrying Bally's. So not only is it dwindling from a team perspective, but they're also dwindling from a carrier perspective, and they've got this looming date where they've got to prove that they can actually be a business, which many people believe they will not be able to do. So ultimately, what is going to happen here? ESPN, I think ESPN is the backstop for all of this, in my opinion. That ESPN has the ability, because they have the rights out of market to play Predators games. I know somebody in the comments was like, hey, I'm in North Carolina. This is how I watch my games. I think the NHL and ESPN can backstop this stuff as an emergency situation. How do we get these games out here? Well, you can go to ESPN Plus. Maybe they charge a small fee. Maybe they give it away for free. Do the Nashville Predators now have a capital B billionaire owner who could, in theory, self-distribute if he wanted to eat the startup costs and turn it into a revenue stream? I think he could. Bill Haslam has the dollars and the resources to do that if he wanted to purchase all of the TV production, which, for those that do not know, from what I understand, they are not Predators employees. The radio folks are Predators employees, from what I understand. And when I was at 102.5, all the TV folk were signed to Fox Sports, which is now turned into Bally Sports. Also to note, the Nashville Predators signed an extension with Bally Sports in September of 2022. So this is a stream of revenue for the Predators that is potentially disappearing. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't think there's a TV channel in the market that they could land on, Adam. That's my concern. Like if Scripps came in or some of these other like-minded companies came in and said, no, we'll buy the TV rights and we'll distribute it over the air in Nashville. I don't know what channel they would land on. If it's CBS or if it's NBC, like they're not going to distribute. I don't know where they'd put the games.
Is there not like a CW channel or something like that?
Possible. That's where it would go. Like CBS Sports, in Nashville only. Something like that.
I'm trying to see, what I saw this, and this is what I saw this yesterday when I was doing some research on it. So Scripps when it went into Vegas, or when the Vegas Golden Knights left, I think it was AT&T, and went to Scripps. It says on Scripps' new independent station, Vegas 34. So I don't know if they must have launched a station, perhaps.
That's possible.
But one thing that's very interesting, according to this press release, and this is why I think the decision to move off of Bally would be beneficial to the Predators.
I agree.
The ratings for the first 5 locally broadcast Vegas Golden Knights games are up 135%. Compared to all major cable telecasts last season after the team moved its distribution to Scripps Sports. 135% growth compares to it says the 135% growth on KMCC compares to local viewership for all 2022-23 Vegas Golden Knights regular season games aired on ESPN and TNT. So, the ability to get into more homes and open fandom to more people, because I think we take that for granted, right? Like not everyone has the ability to afford, super cable packages. Not everyone can afford high-speed internet to stream games. If you put it on over-the-air television, you're opening yourself up to a whole demographic that may not have been hockey fans, that may have been priced out of being hockey fans. But at the end of the day, it should not be easier for people who live outside of a team's viewing area to watch games than the people who live in the viewing area. And you mentioned the Stars leaving Bally, and I think what they're doing is really interesting. So they are launching an app. The Stars are called the Victory Plus app, and it's going to be, according to the Dallas Morning News, the Stars are going to be the first major professional sports team to offer free direct-to-consumer streaming of their games. There are no strings or costs attached to downloading the app other than watching advertisements during stoppages and play. So because a lot of teams that have been doing this, if I'm not mistaken, they have the over-the-air, but they also have a direct-to-consumer streaming app, which you pay for, which I think is more for the people who are out of market, who can't watch the game on over-the-air television. But I like the idea. Even if the Predators, that's the challenge for the Predators or any team that does this, is you can't just expect, you have to have more programming than just, hey, you have to download this app and pay this amount of money to watch the games.
If you're charging, I think you're right. But if it's free, I don't think you need it. I don't think you do.
If it's free, you want to get, it's free, I think it's different. But if they are going to charge,
so I'm a season ticket holder for Nashville SC. I get at my league pass, which is the MLS. I get every MLS game for free with my season ticket package. And the only reason I need that is to watch games that on road games and then go games I missed or couldn't go to. But because I'm a season ticket holder, so I guess it's not free. But like if it's Channel 5 is Scripps in Nashville. They also own, I think, Channel 28, which is WNPX, I think. So maybe that's where it could go. I don't know. I think if you have an over-the-air model and then a free distribution, the key is going to be, can you sell advertising to cover the cost of the talent and the production? That is the key. And because, again, they are not, from what I understand, I could be wrong on this, Hal and Lindsay and the production truck and the camera people and the graphics department and the producers, there's a lot of people that go into producing a television broadcast of a hockey game. None of that is paid for by the Preds, from what I understand. So you'd have to take all of those people and sort of move them in-house. That's a large cost. Could Bill Haslam eat it? Yes, he can. He could absolutely eat it. And then, to your point, build a streaming platform that then can generate an advertising revenue model moving forward. I don't think you do it with a pay model. I don't think it would work.
I'm looking at Nighttime Plus, which is the Golden Knights' streaming app. It costs $69.99 to subscribe
for the year.
It just says, how much does Nighttime Plus cost? Fans can subscribe to every game available on Nighttime Plus for $69.99.
So that's you buy it for the season, like Sunday, like Sunday ticket or whatever. Yeah.
So $69.99 for the season.
I would pay that for Preds games,
and it includes all games broadcast by Scripps Sports. So it obviously does not include games that are nationally televised, carried by ESPN or Turner Sports. So here's what I was talking about. What else will be broadcast on Nighttime Plus? Yeah. Nighttime Plus will feature extensive programming beyond games, including pregame, intermission, and postgame shows, Nightlife with a K, a weekly 30-minute magazine-style show, features and interviews with Golden Knights players, coaches, and executives, game highlights, and shows like Nighttime at Noon, plus specials on major events like NHL trade deadline day. Like, that would be great if the Predators could do something like that. I remember when I first got to Nashville, they had this show they produced in-house called, I think, Beneath the Ice, which is sort of like a 24/7 Hard Knocks style show. Bring something like that back. I like the idea of a magazine style show. I was talking with someone the other day. I said, if they did I was like, I would watch a House Hunters type show, where whichever realtor or realty group works with the Predators, like
for the players,
find Steven Stamkos a new house.
That's pretty good.
Just follow Steven Stamkos as he learns how much houses in Belmead are. Not that matters to him, but I would watch a show like that. Drew just had a comment. I missed
David Legwan wrote a check for my dad's house, by the way, just as a side note. He was like 25 and my dad had worked like 40 years to buy this house in like Franklin. It wasn't a super expensive house, but like David Legwan comes in and wrote a check for it in like 2006 or whatever. Beneath the Ice got us through some late night overtime intermissions. That's true. Drew says, insane that I live 15 minutes from Bridgestone and could drive there and watch in less time than it takes to figure out how to watch on TV Bally app to work right. Here's the thing. It's not worth like $27 a month for that level of production value. While the hosts are great, Willie and C-Mace and Lindsay and all the on-air personalities is great. It's just not, people have shown they're not going to pay for that. They're just not, especially not in the market when you should be able to get it for free. This is why I think there's two ways here. What is the future of Nashville Predators broadcasts? And what is the stopgap in case something bad happens to Bally's in the short term? So there's two different ways that we have to solve this. I think ESPN and ESPN Plus can come in and save, like if midway through the season Bally's collapses, I think somebody maybe in private equity would prop it up for a short term. I don't know, but I think what would happen is ESPN and ESPN Plus can backstop it with emergency coverage if they need to. And again, maybe it's like, hey, for $3.99 you get the rest of your Preds games or something like that. I don't know. But ultimately, they have to have a solution. They have to put the game somewhere. And over the air with direct-to-consumer as a package deal is the future. Like, you get a local over-the-air product that somebody's going to pay for, help you broadcast it, that already has all the capabilities to do that in the market, like News Channel 5, which is Scripps in this market. And then You distribute it in Murfreesboro and Middle Tennessee, maybe some markets, Clarksville, Bowling Green, something like that. And then you build a direct-to-consumer model like Vegas has built. I mean, that is the future. Like, that's where we're headed with this. Because
yeah, I mean,
Diamond Sports Group is not what read the tea leaves here. Teams are leaving literally left and right from Bally's.
And you're right. There are 9 teams left of that list I read off earlier. The 2 teams I missed were Carolina and Columbus. So 9 teams left on Bally, and I imagine that number is going to significantly decrease over the next couple of months. But
sorry to interrupt. Here's the other thing about those teams that they all have in common. I would argue they other than Detroit, which I would assume Detroit and maybe even Minnesota. Detroit and Minnesota probably have very good distribution options available in their market. Detroit Red Wings games would be a massive pull, in my opinion, in Detroit. I could see the same thing for the Wild. The other ones, though, I'm not sure how much TV ratings these teams draw. I mean, Carolina's
Anaheim, Los Angeles, Carolina, Columbus, Nashville, Tampa Bay, and what was the other one?
You said St. Louis.
And St. Louis, yeah.
Like, I just wonder what kind of ratings Columbus gets in the biggest city in Ohio. You know, like, what are their options? And Nashville doesn't have a lot of options because we don't have, like, you're not going to, if Scripps buys the options to the Preds, they're not going to put them on every night on Channel 5. Like, that's not what's going to happen.
You might have to launch a channel. They might have to launch another channel.
That's very possible. In which case, if I'm Bill Haslam and I'm the Predators, I just do it myself. And then I can make all the money, whether it's subscription money or advertising revenue or both. Diversify. That's what I would do if I was them. And you might spend some money on the cost up front to acquire the talent and to get the thing off the ground. But it's going to be a long-term solution for your product, in my opinion. That's my opinion. But nobody's asking me. So, all right, Adam. At Adam Vingan, right, is the Twitter account?
Still is. Sure is. Yeah.
You can be found on other places arguing with future Predators about stuff. Well, you weren't arguing. You were asking the tough questions.
I was arguing with someone?
No, you weren't. I was kidding.
Not yet. I mean, I do like to argue.
My TV 30. Joel says, My TV 30 available over the air in HD and seems pretty hungry for content. How many reruns of Cops does one city need? I think that's a good place to end this conversation.
I mean, what you gonna do?
Yeah. There we go. Have you guys seen the one that's live?
Live Cops?
Have you seen that one?
No, but that sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen.
It's a Friday night, and they have like 3 different police departments like around. My wife is obsessed with this show. I don't know if it's still on anymore, but like was obsessed with this show. Like it was live, and it would happen. They would go live at like 8 o'clock on a Friday night or like 9 o'clock on a Friday night, and they would follow 3 different like police departments around the country, and they would cut back and forth with like it was red zone. It was the cops.
Red zone for
it was red zone for cops.
Something seems
it was weird
about that. I mean, the last cop related thing I saw that like made me raise my eyebrow was the Nashville police officer who got fired because he participated in that OnlyFans girls video.
Yeah, we don't need to. Yes, I do. Officer OnlyFans. I do a whole other show. I do a whole other show about that. And
you do a whole other show about OnlyFans?
that would be awesome and news to my wife. No, I do a political show, a news show, I should say, where
you do that.
When the Nashville Police Department wants to do an investigation, by God, they can do it. And when they don't want to do it, by God, they don't.
All you got to do is grab some girl's boob and there'll be an investigation.
Totally legally and with consent. That's also apparently grounds for termination. All right, we are off the rails here. Thank you all for subscribing. Lower Broad Hockey, please go check that out. We do appreciate it. The response has been incredible, and it's because of you folks that we are able to do it and continue to do it. We've got a lot of fun things coming for you guys. We're going to invest in this thing, and it's going to get bigger and bigger before the season starts. So be ready, be over there now. The chat is completely lit up, so appreciate you guys for doing that and making it happen. Thank you, Adam, for hanging out, man. Always a pleasure, big man.
I hope that Michael feels better and that he's having some chicken wings with bones in them.
His little tendies. Eat those little tendies, Michael. Get tweet him at @MGSports_. Tell him I hope you feel better and I hope you enjoy your tendies. For Adam Vingan, I am Braden Gall. Thank you guys for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week.